What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today we're going to be looking at a few things surrounding Forspoken, and this is going to be mainly on performance, and then I'll talk a little bit about gameplay and a few things over the benchmarks when that starts to play, because the biggest crux of the whole matter was, oh, the game, requires huge hardware to run and blah, blah, blah. But I think there are many hyper reactionaries over this game in terms of the conversation. Now, one of the best things you can do is basically just not play a game you don't want to play. But, sometimes people are able to talk about it without sounding outlandish and outrageous. I think I've played the game for about 2 hours. So let's go ahead and talk about build specs and how that's relevant in this conversation. So for those of you who remember, when the game was first unveiled in its GPU and CPU requirements and all, the RTX 4080 was supposed to be how you can play the game at 4K 60 FPS ultra settings. So that's what we're going to use to run these, but this is going to be a 1440 for this conversation. I'll make a tweak to 4K, and we're going to see a little bit how that works out. CPU is a 3900X, memory is 32 gigs, just to make sure that that is actually a pertinent conversation. So when you try to look and load the game, you can see that my playtime is about an hour-ish. Or whatever it is, or 2 hours in a sense. High 1 hours, I guess that's how I'm gonna put it, or maybe a little bit 2 hours plus. And then in terms of the settings, we're using 1440. We're locked at 60, and I'm going to go full screen, and we're gonna run benchmarks for the game. This is where things get interesting. So first of all, you can tell that fundamentally this game's design is a little strange. And I say strange because of the way they've decided to go ahead and adapt the game's design and progression, or progression mechanics in a sense. I don't even know if I should call it progression, but the way the game moves you from, aspect to aspect of its own video game is a little weird and warped. And I don't know what I would make of it, because there are aspects of the game where you go ahead and, you finish one area, or there's a slight conversation or a dialogue or something. The game has to load in the next phase of, its progression for you. So that's actually quite weird in the way things are done. But again, I'm not going to go ahead and beat around the bush for this. Now, the settings that you're seeing, I'm using standard, settings at 1440. So this is the base level. A lot of texture detail is actually, basically removed in order for you to be able to get high frame rates. This game is very texture heavy. More than anything else, I think this might be one of its biggest sore spots. So when you kind of knock down a bunch of the texture detail, you're going to see high frame rates, regardless. In most games you will. And you can already see from here that you're getting very, very good frame rates. Within the game world itself, there were some difficulties at 4K trying to get this amount, but at 1440, you're seeing some really solid output, especially if your 6800 XT is something that, you're trying to maybe get 1440 out of. I can see an easy 100 FPS, as some people have mentioned, actually happening. In terms of GPU utilization, in terms of CPU, cooling, the 4080 cools very well. That's not a problem in terms of temps. I don't know what the 6800 XT is going to do though. I need to test out mine. It's just a lot of work. I'm not interested in doing all that, palaver right now. But hey, I'll try my best. If I can't, it is what it is. And so you see that your CPU cores are being used very well. You see that your GPU is being used decently. In 4K, I remember the GPU goes crazy. It goes all the way up to, the 4K experience, and man, and then the game struggles. And this place actually here, this particular scene is, in my opinion, one of the most tasking areas of the game. If you notice, the GPU, the FPS loss is significant, but you don't see an increase in the GPU utilization, nor do you see a difference in the CPU core usage. And I think it's because that area probably needs to be optimized in terms of its textures as well. It seems to be a detailed area regardless of what your texture density settings are. So that's basically where you're seeing it. And then over here, this particular castle area, this is one of the beginning areas. You're going to also be seeing some really decent FPS. But it's interesting that you have to load these different worlds and run the frame rates. I guess they're trying to say with their benchmarking tool, trying to run your benchmarks, that each aspect of the world is going to give you varying, performance metrics overall. So I guess this is probably something that they're looking at. In the grasslands, they do decently well. 128, 130 FPS. That's pretty good. The frame time shows that things are working very well. Also, I've run this benchmark before, so it might be that, shaders have compiled very well. But the world is not really, that detailed as we speak. So we'll go back and we'll run some other settings. I think there's one or two more areas that still need to go ahead and run their benchmarks before we go ahead and tweak some of those settings. Another thing that you must pay very close attention to is some of the settings, when you change them, the game has to go back to its main menu. It's weird. And this is a different iteration of that same marketplace, but it has better performance, which I can't really understand. Maybe you approach it in different ways in the first time you get in here. Maybe this is the area you see, or maybe when you start trying to fast travel to it from the map, that's probably what you're going to get. I don't know what that means, but I guess this is maybe in more depth to the area itself. So the average FPS is 150 FPS overall across all the different areas. So let's go ahead and tweak the settings a little bit, and let's talk about it from a 1440p perspective, and giving a little bit more in terms of textures, in terms of quality. Graphics settings, if you notice, I told you guys that was like standard. That's basically already, this is predetermined image quality settings. So this should give you the best performance overall because everything is already set up. If you notice, that's pretty much what they're saying. Now, if we go in and get, say, high settings, now we're talking. So high settings is going to give us a little bit more. If we're going to run some benchmarks. Let's just go ultra. Let's just do ultra, because ultra high. This would need to be changed let's not do that. Let's leave the textures where they are on standard, because I think this is a very big thing, because this game, and then we're going to run the benchmark again, because this game, those textures are the biggest things. That's why they have an entire segment to pretty much calculate and give you texture pooling. So if you notice already, we've dropped FPS by a significant 30 to even 40% or more even. And that's crazy in just the FPS drop. And I don't really see too much in terms of quality improvement. If you do, let me know. So here, we're just going to go ahead and run this again, and we'll see how that just all works. Yeah, I mean, I don't see too much of a difference. I see a difference, but it's not too much going from standard. Well, that's because the textures are still in standard. I guess that makes sense. Hold on, let's get out of here. And then let's go back and let's tweak that a little bit. So, yeah, this is a very interesting set of parameters and the way they've set up this game. Settings. So texture memory, the model memory, set the amount of memory to be allocated to 3D models. So you can set more memory, but you now have to go to the screen. Return to title screen to reflect updated changes. That's what I was trying to tell you. Some of these settings require for you to go there. Settings, let's go ahead and make this texture memory. This says adjust the amount of memory allocated to textures high. And then let's do that. So you're going to see this pretty much make a difference, or a big enough difference anyways. So benchmark. Yeah, because I think that's a fair way to benchmark the whole game, is you want to benchmark the game across the different areas or regions. I wish you can skip regions though in the benchmarks, but and there you have it, about 87 FPS average across all of the different maps and different areas. So the performance is not going to be consistent across the whole game because the different areas apparently have different demands and artistic parameters they wanted to put in there. But the game is actually okay. I mean, I think from the gameplay perspective, I'm not seeing any performance issues except when we go to 4K. That's when things get really interesting. So I guess we'll do a 4K test, maybe try to use a 4090 to pull that one off, and we'll see how that goes. All right, thanks so much for watching the video. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.